we'll be starting the event by introducing our speakers for the day. All, all the speakers are MIT alumni who have pursued research overseas in various respective fields. Yeah.
Okay, so our first speaker that we have is Shubha Murthy. Shubha graduated from MIT in 2022 with a B.Tech degree in aeronautical engineering. She is pursuing her master's in aerospace engineering at the University of Washington, specializing in plasma sciences with deep space propulsion and fusion. She is also interning at the Advanced Space Propulsion Systems Lab at Fuji University in Japan. She has pursued multiple internships at IIT Bombay, where she worked at the Combustion Research Laboratory. She was also a part of the rocket propulsion team at the Society for Space Education, Research and Development. She authored the research paper on exploration of photos by uh, orbital exploration of photos by nanosatellite using solar electric propulsion, which was published in the IEEE Aerospace Conference in 2022.
So our next speaker is Rakshit Naidu. So he pursued his BTech from MIT in the field of computer science, and he graduated in 2021. He's currently pursuing his master's at Carnegie Mellon University with major in information technology. So he's pursuing the MSIT program. Along with that, his research interests span over cryptography, privacy, and machine learning. He has been a research engineer at Open Mind. Our community, we're working on lowering the barrier for entry into AI. He's also currently a research scholar at Syracuse University, working on differential privacy. Alongside, one of the fun facts is Rakshit is the official TEDx speaker as well. He has given a talk on data privacy and threaded learning for climate change. So moving on, we also have Surbhi Avas.
So Surbi pursued her B.Tech degree in chemical engineering from MIT, where she graduated in 2022 with her honors degree. She is currently doing her MSc in advanced chemical engineering with biotechnology at the City College London. Her research interests include regulatory systems and molecular dynamics simulations, regarding which she has published multiple research papers in renowned journals such as the Journal of Molecular Fluids and Biotechnology Reports. The last speaker that we have for today is Gokul.
So Gokul is a 2022 batch graduate pursuing his bachelor's from MIT Manipal with a major in ECE, and is currently pursuing a PhD in aerospace engineering at University of Illinois UIUC. Gokul actively worked in robotics and automation during his college. He pursued several internships, including at IIIT Hyderabad and IISc Bhopal. He was also a MITAX fellow and was selected for a project at Queen's University in Canada. And he was also one of the few who was selected for the prestigious CMU RISS program. Alongside, he has completed several industrial internships as well at GE Aviation and Delta Electronics. He was also placed second in the NASA Space App Challenge and has published several articles in the field of robotics as well as in top conferences. Yes.
So we will be beginning with the statement of purpose. Statement of purpose or an SOP covers your personal experiences and academic qualifications. The purpose of an SOP is to establish your academic background, research interests, motivation, and career goals. Think of it as a pitch to the admissions committee as to why they should choose you over other applicants. A well-written SOP also reflects how well you can express your thoughts using writing skills. So the very first question that we have is for Shubha.
Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Okay, so could you give us an introduction?
Sorry, I couldn't really hear you. Okay, is the first question, has it been asked or?
Yes, so I just asked, could you give us an introduction to SOP, how you would begin drafting one,
All right.
and how
Okay.
important it is for applications?
Hi. Okay. So I'm sorry about that. I couldn't really. Also, I can hear my voice back and it's weird. But so I do think the SOP has like a lot of weightage in your application. Um, and it's something that I personally spent the most amount of time in, primarily because by the time it's time for you to like apply, you don't really have a lot of control over your test scores or your grades, or there's no active research or that you can do along with, like, maybe you can, but then it's just a process that takes so much energy from you, and it's super stressful. So the SOP is probably the only thing um, that is left from your end, and the LORs and such. So that was under my control. And the way I would recommend people starting out with your SOPs is just doing a lot of homework on the research programs that you're interested in, probably mailing professors that you want to work with, or want them to be, or like are looking, if you're looking at potential advisors for your PhD or even for like MS and stuff, if you can get in touch with them beforehand, really understand the kind of problems that they're trying to solve. Surf through websites and brochures, whatever you can get your hands on, or talk to seniors if they've worked in the same lab with the same professors, and try to understand exactly what it is that you seek from the programs that you're applying to, and what kind of skill sets can you bring to the table, um, and why you would be like the perfect fit. So maybe start off with how you got interested in the field. First of all, just sitting down and sort of brainstorming and reflecting, or just like introspecting on your research journey, or listing out a couple of research experiences that defined you or helped you reach where you are right now. That is helpful. Just write them down. Some might make it to your SOP, some might not. Any like defining moments that really cemented your passion for whatever it is that you want to pursue. Um, Anything that shows the admissions committee that you are dedicated and intellectually mature for whatever it is that you want to achieve. There, be it an MS or a PhD, or yeah. So start with how you've had like a long term interest in that field and all the positive steps that you've taken pursuing this interest, and anything that is relevant, your particular talents and abilities that are relevant to your academic interests is a good place to start. And I did make a list of a lot of questions that you guys can think about before you start writing your first draft, and I'll share it after the session. And I think that is what I used as like a broad outline of framework for my SOP. I just answered them, wrote down every research experience and what I've learned from that, and how it has led me to apply to the university that I was writing the SOP to. So, yeah.
Hello. Hi, Rakshit. Are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. So since you are being like an experienced grad student who have reviewed like a bunch of SOPs and written them yourself, would you like to like love to hear? Would you like to give you like a overview like what are the factors which are considered most important while screening SOPs?
Yeah, sure. When you write your SOPs, I think the first thing that you might want to think about is it's basically like writing a film storyline, right? And you can just think of that analogy. And what you want to do is that you want to start from the beginning and then you also want to give it a good shot at the end. So your beginning and your end kind of uh, determines how you basically um, structure your SOP in that way. So these are the two important things. So your beginning would possibly be like, you don't want to go too far back, because you might start saying that, oh, okay, maybe since I was a toddler, I was like quite interested in science, and that's why I wanted to research. I mean, that is very cliched and too banal, but yeah, I think you could probably start off with some experience that you gained within your first year of undergrad, or maybe like towards your end of your high school. And you might say that, okay, this was one experience that I really liked about uh, pursuing science or your research career, or whatever, and hence you want to stick to this field, or maybe explore some other opportunities related to this field, and so on. So you would go on building this experience along with like two or three other experiences, and then you would structure it that way. And then when you come to your end of your SOP, you would just finish off with a bang by saying that, okay, look, I have done all of this, and now you want to justify like what makes you a good candidate, saying that maybe you have better scores in your GRE, or maybe better scores in your better GPA, or maybe you have relevant research experiences related to what you've already done, um, or what you want to pursue. So I think these are like important factors that you need to keep in mind. So I think structuring your SOP is really important. You can think of it as a storyline that um, you really want the interviewer, or the person on the other end, to actually understand you, and also know where you're coming from, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Rakshit. So our next question is for Surbi. And so our question is, what should be the format of our SOP and how should the flow be? Would anybody else like to answer that question?
The question was relating to the format of the SOP, right? Is Surabhi not able to
Yeah,
hear
so
you
what should the
guys?
format of our SOP be and how the flow should be?
Okay, so I think Rakshit talked about this. Uh, everything he said was the format essentially. Like you start off with some defining experience from the SOPs that I've read that you've had, that led you to be interested in science, or the exact field that you're pursuing. And then you list a couple of formative research experiences, and then you try to convince them and you persuade them that you've got all the skill sets that are required for this program. I think Surabhi is trying to.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Hello?
Sorry.
Oh God. Okay, I started talking and I think I was muted all along, so I think no one was able to hear me. But yeah, basically, I had mentioned exactly what Shiva said, that the SOP is the selling point, and you have to make sure that you convince the university or wherever you're applying that you are the apt candidate. So yeah, as Rakshit mentioned, you start off with something, some experience, something that you have gone through that dragged you towards this field of interest, and then, along with that, you mention other things that you've done. Like, of course, you mentioned about the research interest, but if you have taken up something where you portrayed leadership skills, or volunteering, or you can show them other stuff, that you can say that I'm good with managerial roles, or you can say I'm good at convincing people and all that. If it is related to what you're applied for, then yes, you put all that also, and you just don't put experience. You just don't say that I was the president of so and so something. You tell how it helped you and why do you think that is important in the role that you are applying for. So all these little things you mentioned, along with your main focus should be mentioning about what you have done in the field of research or whatever you're applying for, and then along with that you can mention the side things also. But again, you have to convince them that how did that benefit you? Like, why are you telling them that? What's the point? So you have to tell them how you can how that has benefited you, and that makes you a perfect candidate for the post you're applying for. So that's all. That's how it starts with an experience, and then you can carry on narrating other incidents and how telling what all you've done in that field, and how you have. And then in the end, you can mention a little bit of the extracurricular activities also. I hope if
If
anyone
it
can wants to
ties,
add on, you can.
yeah. So if your extracurricular activities tie in with how you're going to get through like stress, or how you're going to avoid burnout, that you have other coping mechanisms that you can rely on, and that you'll be efficient and productive, then that helps because of your extracurriculars. And I think mention your short term goals and your long term goals as well towards the end, and how the university and the program helps you with those goals, right? That is essential as well. So that, yeah,
Yeah,
just write down
I
how,
guess.
yeah, you get the point.
Yeah, that's quite insightful. So our next question will be towards Gokul. So how can one highlight the specificities of their past projects and research, and how does one mention a professor whom we would like to collaborate with in a master's maybe?
Mhm. So, firstly, hi guys, thank you for having me here. To answer the question, specifically, what I followed was something I call the inverse pyramid. I can think of it as a pyramid, but just inverted. You start with research experience on a very high level, which includes a very broad sense. So it'll be like the base of the pyramid, which is super broad. So in my case, you can think of it as robotics. Robotics is a very vague and super broad field. So you start with that, how you get started with robotics research, and as years pass by, how we narrowed down to that very specific field in robotics that you wanted to concentrate in. And your SOP should essentially be something in the same line where you end up to the tip of the pyramid, saying that this is the exact field of research I'm going to concentrate in. So what some students miss out on is when they start writing their SOP, they miss out on this purpose that SOP is supposed to project your purpose of application. They start writing about they've done this, they've done that, they've done this research internship, this research internship, etc. And what ends up happening is it misses out on the purpose. You miss out on telling what is the purpose of you doing a master's degree or a PhD degree. So it is important that through your research experience in past projects, you also highlight your purpose. So it could be something like, in my case, I did a research internship with a professor in a certain university, and the research outcome was quantifiably better in terms of numbers than what was previously done. And the university that I was applying to also had a similar research that was being done. So you can somehow uh, try to match both of these and say, this is one research field I'm interested in, this is what I've contributed to, this is what the professor in the university is doing, and this is what I think I can add value to the university. So that essentially is your purpose. Your purpose would be to add value to the research community in general through the university. So this is one thing I do not want you guys to miss out on. So do not miss out on the purpose part of your statement of purpose. It should not essentially end up being just statements. It should also project your purpose. That's the whole point of me saying this. And the second important thing is, while applying for your graduate studies, you will be submitting your CV and your SOP. The CV is a detailed resume, so it generally I think there will come on how to write a good CV as well. But your SOP should not be a verbose of your CV. So if you mention stuff, research stuff in your CV, in your SOP, you should not end up writing the same thing again. It should not. It should not. It should not just be filler words added in between. It should essentially be quantifiable stuff and how it connects to the research in the university. And it is important that you mention only relevant projects, relevant research work that you're applying to. It is okay to mention non-relevant as well, but if there's a 1,000 word constraint in most cases, so it is important that you make good use of this 1,000 words and you mention only stuff that is relevant. And as for writing about which professor you want to work with, so one good thing with almost all universities abroad is that professors have their own separate lab web page and a separate web page of their own. So it is very easy to find them. All you have to do is you have to go to the department website. If you look at the professors in the department, the area you're looking for example, if it is my case, again, I'll give an example with respect to my case. So for me, it was robotics, and robotics is under aerospace at UIUC. So all I have to do was go to aerospace engineering and robotics category, and you get a list of professors in the robotics engineering who work on robotics research in general. You start looking at each of these professors separately and in detail. If you like the work that is being done in the lab, you have to read. I strongly suggest you read one or two of their papers that vibes with your interest. And yeah, it is important that you mention professors in your SOP. So I generally mention a single professor in SOP with whom I strongly want to work with, but there is no limit on the number you can mention. But if you mention one professor and in detail tell why you want to work with that professor, that would be a ideally good way to go about it. And you will also have to, at some point in your application, choose the professors you want to work with as well. So it is important that you go through the list of professors and the research work they're doing. And it's quite easy. As I mentioned, all of them have separate websites of their own. So it is very easy to figure out what each professor is doing. And as I mentioned, try as much as possible to connect your prior research with the professor's research and tell how the prior research experience uh, can help further the research done in the professor's lab. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, so I think I would just like to add to that. Gokul pretty much
Yes,
covered.
thank you so much, Gokul.
Yeah.
So our next question is towards Shubha, and that is how long does it take to draft an SOP? Can we mention volunteer work and extracurricular activities?
Yeah, so I would just like to add something to what Gokul said. Make sure the professor you look up is like actively working in the field of research that you are interested in. That they haven't like moved elsewhere, because this happened with me and a couple of other people that I know. Like we were looking at one university and one professor, but they were transferring to another place, or they had given up that field of research, or they'd moved to another field. So make sure that this person is really the right person that you're writing and elaborately talking about in your SOP. um, how long? Okay, as far as the timeline is concerned for an SOP, for me personally, I took about a week after really thinking about what I want to write, sending my SOP and my drafts actually to friends and seniors and such. And for me to have the final draft ready, it took me about a week. But I think this is very subjective, depends from person to person. um, just make sure you get as much criticism and review and proof checking as you can. Get Grammarly, do all of that, format it well. Writing, like being a good writer, it does matter and make a difference. So um, as far as volunteering work and extracurricular activities is concerned, so an application might have multiple sections where you would have to input paragraphs or answer questions. So if there is another place apart from your SOP where you can talk about this, or there's a personal statement that's also asked of you, that might be a better place for extracurriculars if you have a lot of them. But in your statement of purpose in mine, I talked about like me being a Bharatanatyam dancer and like trained in it since a young age, and how that sort of ties in with just sticking to one field for a very long time and just not being new to doing the same thing and being persistent and yeah, persevering through that. So if you can find any sort of connection between your personal traits that will help you in your research and your extracurriculars, I think it's a good way to um, be persuasive. And where you talk about it also matters. Make sure the transition is smooth, like it doesn't come out of nowhere. Like there is, yeah, like it flows well and it reads well, and it seems relevant as well. Yeah.
Interactive questions. So you guys might have some SOP related questions. Yeah. Okay. Do you want to ask questions to them? Oh, yeah. I think it's better you understand my question. You answer it. Okay. So there are some thesis-based masters which actually need a professor guide. So there are some of them, some universities like how you can form the thing. Then you can approach the professor. What is the best idea for the professor? How to approach the market or like for the university.
Okay, so we have a question from the audience. So there are some programs so where you have a thesis based masters, and so it is preferably given like you can contact the professor before and then fill the form for masters, or you can fill the form and then contact the professors you want to work with masters. So which one is more beneficial, and your overview on thesis based masters in general?
So I could take this question. Uh, so UIOC in general has this concept where you can get in touch with the professor before applying to the program itself, or as they mentioned, MS and thesis-based MS. And the good thing being, it will be you get a graduate research assistantship before starting your program itself. And yeah, so I would strongly suggest contacting the professor before applying. If you've made up your mind you want to do a thesis-based masters, I would strongly suggest you contact the professor before applying. So in some universities it won't matter. I know for a fact that places like Harvard, it doesn't matter if you contact or not. The decision is not by the professor. The decision is by the admissions committee. So in those places it won't matter, but where in the universities where they say they have an option to contact the professors, I would strongly suggest you contact them before applying, because even I don't know what happens behind the scenes when your SOP is reviewed, but my intuition is that uh, it will at some point, your SOP and all your application documents will at some point reach the professor you're interested in. So if you contact the professor beforehand, it will uh, I would say it will ease out the process on his end as well. And for a matter of fact, my roommate is a master's thesis student in computer science here, and he was interviewed before even he started his application. So, uh, so the professor generally interviews you to find out if you're a good fit for the lab and if he's a good fit as an advisor to yourself. And in some cases, also say you want to work with a certain professor, as Shubha mentioned, there's a chance that the professor might be moving out, or there's also equally good chance that the lab does not have enough funds to support you. So you contact the professor, there's a good chance he'll tell if the lab has enough funds to support you or not. So yeah, the bottom line being, if it is an option to contact the professor, if the program says it's an option to contact the professor, I strongly suggest you to contact them. And for PhD, you should definitely contact them. You shouldn't hesitate, and should actually start contacting them around this time, October, August, September, Octoberish. And yeah, with regards to thesis-based masters, the only big difference is that you do a 6-month thesis in your final semester. In a non-thesis based master, it is an option to go for a co-op or internship. Um, and generally, in public universities, thesis-based students are given higher priority for research assistantship than uh, non-thesis-based students. So that is the big difference, and you'll also get to take independent studies, which are completely research oriented. If it is a thesis-based masters, if it is a non-thesis-based masters, it's a little bit more flexible towards the industry, but the coursework in general is very similar. You get to choose the same courses. Uh, so if you're a thesis-based student, it is like a superset kind of a thing. You can choose stuff from non-thesis as well. But if you're non-thesis-based students, some of the research courses will not be, you will not be allowed to register for them for credit. You can register for them without credit and audit them to a good extent, but uh, you generally will not be able to register for them for credit. So yeah, that's the big difference in thesis and non-thesis based masters. I hope I answered the question. Mhm.
Questions? Yeah. So we have a question here. So one of our audience is a third year, and he has just started working on research, and he wants to know like how should he approach writing a SOP for various research programs as well as summer internship for the upcoming year, because he is not having much time, and like how should he approach writing a SOP in that case for various programs and internships?
I can take this up. So in order to write the SOP or maybe something like a cover letter for different yeah, for different programs, I think it might be better to tailor each one of them specific to each of the program that you're applying to, because I understand that you might have just started out with research, but I know it might be a little hard and a little intimidating. But yeah, I think you need to like put in a little more effort and like just tailoring like you just need to like tailor it to like specific programs, because I'm pretty sure you're going to apply to programs that are related to each other like in some sense. So just tailoring it to like like to your particular interests and to the interests of that particular lab or that particular program would be, yeah, it would be beneficial for you to get matched much more at a higher success rate. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rakshit. Anyone else from the audience would like to ask a question? Yeah. Okay, so we have a question from audience. So so person is a fourth year student, and yeah, third year student. Okay, and he wants to know like when we are going for our 8th sem internship. So what is more beneficial, like taking an internship at a 8th semester, like taking an internship at a start of a company in the 8th semester, or going for a research-based internship or a final project to some foreign universities? Like which helps, which one is more helpful for individual?
um, let me give a shot at this. So yeah. Okay. So what I did was I basically took an industry internship, and then I went into my master's program. So I think since you're going to apply for, let's say you're going to apply for a fall 23 program. So if you're going to apply for a fall 23 program, your application's deadline would be around November or December of this year, of 2022. So it kind of does not matter too much, like what you do between January to July of 2023, because the decisions are going to come out before you even actually decide what you're going to do. um, yeah, it does not actually matter, right? In some sense. So if you want to pursue a PhD, I would say like doing a research internship might be beneficial, because you might get like first hand experience on like what research entails, and um, like what kind of problems do you face in academia and so on. But then if you want to do something like a um, masters or something, like if you want to pursue a job like after your masters as well, I think an industry internship is like beneficial, um, because you get an experience on like how the industry works, and you might get to tackle some problems that are very relevant in the current industry. So I think it's based on what you want to do. And yeah, I think you should you could possibly even take up the other option in some sense, because even if you want to do research, you might want to see what the industry looks like. So that's why you might end up choosing an industry internship, and that's kind of what I did, because I wanted to see what the industry looks like and what kind of problems do they solve. And and after I did that, I was like, yeah, I realized that the industry wasn't for me. Yeah, I was much more interested in research, so that's why I transitioned over to uh, research during my master's program. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Rakshit. So with this, we'll be moving on to. Okay, you want to ask a counter question? Yeah. Yeah, this is a nice question. So we have a question from the audience where, so say like everyone who is applying to a particular opportunity or a project, most of them have the same skills. So when writing a SOP, how can one stand out or show their skills in a better way so that to increase their chances of getting into the program or getting the internship? So yeah.
I could try a shot at it. So one thing, I think I'd mentioned it in my previous answer as well. If you go beyond what others are doing, that's where you get a chance to prove yourself different from others. So say you read a couple of papers from the professor and you give insights into how things can be made better in the professor's research. That is one way of doing it. Let's say you figured out you want to work as a research assistant in your eighth semester in a certain professor's lab, and you read a few of his papers and you figure out that you could come up with a slightly better algorithm or a slightly better way of solving the problem. So if you could mention it in your SOP. I did that specifically in my statement of purpose, where I mentioned my ideas and how different it is from the lab's current approach, and how better it could be in terms of it's all lemmas, it's all theories. So there's no way of me proving it, but if there's a way that you can give a POC that it is working to a certain extent, that would also be a good way to set yourself apart. Other than that, it is writing SOP is more of a creative skill of projecting your uh, prior work in a way that's more appealing. So it is important that, as everyone else mentioned in the panel, it is important that you do it the right way. So you don't shouldn't choose the cliche option. You shouldn't start with stories from your past that do not add any value to your statement of purpose, or in general your cover letter or anything. You shouldn't go the cliche way. So personally, how I did it was I could. So if anyone's interested, I could share my SOP as well after the call. I don't want to do it right now because there is stuff that I could do it after the call. You could feel free to contact me. So how I did it was I very specifically targeted the research in the lab, and each SOP was very specifically tailored. I think Rakshit had mentioned that it is important to tailor it. So you shouldn't go for a very generic option. Tailor it as specifically as possible to the lab or the research group you're trying to apply to. And it even applies to companies. Like when applying to companies off campus, you have to write a cover letter of sorts. So it is important that you tailor your SOP very, very specifically to the group that you're applying for. So that is one good way of setting yourself apart.
Thank you, Gokul.
Ready on time. But if you formulate your basic statement of purpose and submit it to us, we'll be ready to take your application. So 15th would be the deadline. 15th night would hopefully we expect you to apply for it. So yeah, that's it majorly. So we'll move on to the next section on resume and so we can start.
हेलो गाइस तुम लोग में से कितने लोग ने
For SOP, not necessarily. I will take it up later.
ओके सो तुम लोग में से कितने बनाना स्टार्ट कर दिए फॉर इंटर्नशिप्स या फिर कोई माई टाइप्स का स्कॉलरशिप वगैरह? सिर्फ फ्रंट रोज ने बनाया क्या अपना सीवी और रेज्यूमे? ओके, सो आई होप कि बाकी लोग जिन्होंने नहीं बनाया है वो ट्राई कर रहे होंगे कि एसओ बेसिकली सीवी रेज्यूमे कैसे बनाए. सो वी विल आस्क आवर सीनियर्स कि बेसिकली सीवी रेज्यूमे में ऐसे क्या क्या पॉइंट्स डाले. बेसिकली कल मैं अपना सीवी बना था, राइट, एक मतलब माई टैक्स के लिए. सो बेसिकली उसमें पता नहीं था कि एग्जैक्टली क्या क्या चीजें, क्या क्या हेडिंग्स होनी चाहिए, स्किल्स, अकम्पलिशमेंट्स वगैरह वगैरह. सो वी विल आस्क सीनियर्स कि सीवी रेज्यूमे में ऐसे क्या पॉइंट्स होने चाहिए सो दैट सीवी ऐसे थोड़ा उभर के आएगा. सब कुछ चलेगा? ठीक है. सो माइक ऑन था ना? या सो कैन एनी वन ऑफ यू address to this question?
Am I audible? Okay, so I will begin this, but I might miss out on a lot of points, so I guess the others can just add on once I'm done. So in case of a resume, firstly, before you start, you just don't make one resume. It depends completely on what you're applying for. So first, check your job profile, check what you're applying for, what does it entail, what you have to do in that, understand it properly, and then start writing resume. Or you can keep a skeleton ready and modify it accordingly. So basically, ideally don't put your photo, don't put details like your age and stuff like that, unless they have asked for it. And you can write a small 3-4 lines on what's your goal or what you would intend to do, and followed by you put your work experience. And as Gokul mentioned, it has to be all very detailed. And yeah, you put your work experience in the most recent one first, and the ones which before that, whatever happened after that. So it's in chronological order, like in the opposite order. And then you put your educational qualifications. It will again, you'll talk about what you can write about what modules you did. Like if the modules are very it's related to what you're applying for, then you can mention those modules which you did in college. And if you have to opted for additional modules of management or whatever, probably you can put that. You can put your GPA. And after that,
Thanks a lot. किसी को कुछ सीवी के बारे में डाउट है कि कैसे बनाने, कोई स्पेसिफिक सब हेडिंग के बारे में कि क्या 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 इंक्लूड करना होता है बेसिकली? या so there is a doubt that so can we ongoing projects, like suppose if we are writing a research paper जो अभी तक पब्लिश नहीं हुआ है, तो उसके बारे में मेंशन कर सकते हैं क्या?
I think archive is a great place where if you have the DOI of the paper, then you can include that in your resume and you can try to get it posted or published on archive if it's not been published by the journal or the conference that you're aiming for.
Shiva, actually, there's some network issues.
Just give us a minute.
क्या हो गया?
Since you're like resolving the network issue, some of you have like some doubt, maybe like which software to use while making a CV. Some of you have such doubts like what to use, like what sections, what to use, like try to compress some information in one page, or maybe like that, right? Just like give us a minute to troubleshoot the issue, and if you come on to those. In the meantime, if you have any questions, just keep us of those. We try to answer every one of them by our speakers and they had here. Thank you. Yeah, I guess it's yeah.
Yeah, Shubha, you can like now answer the question.
Yeah, sure. So I think Surabhi, did you finish your train of thought? Like, did you finish saying everything that you had to?
No, actually, I
Yeah.
didn't. I thought I was not
Yeah.
audible. So no, I was just saying that followed by the experience you mentioned about your educational qualifications, which consists of the modules and all. And then you can, of course, as you mentioned, there are projects, ongoing projects you've done, your published papers. Ideally, you put that before the people put that before the work experience, sorry, before the education qualifications. And you mentioned about your work projects that are going on also, like someone asked. And in the end, you can mention about extracurricular activities, the languages you know, what are your hobbies, and all that. But yeah, that will be in the extreme end. But before, yeah, this is just a gist of how you do about it. But yeah, make sure that whatever you mention in the CV, it is very, very related to what you're applying for, so that again, the person who's reading it feels that you are suitable for the job. Yeah. So yeah, keep that in mind before you put anything there. And Shubha, you can add on.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that, like, to answer the question that was asked about publishing research that hasn't been or mentioning research that hasn't been published yet, you can definitely talk about it in your resume. But if you have a manuscript ready, or if you have something that can be published on archive, that's waiting on, like, to be published elsewhere or in the designated place, be it a conference or a journal, whatever it is that you're aiming for, you should try to get the manuscript in or make that available for them to look at, in case that's ready. And if not, I think you could just talk about the broad outline of what problem you're trying to solve and how you're going about it. And yeah, and a resume in general, like both for your SOP and for your CV, I would strongly suggest you use LaTeX and some of the built-in um, templates that they have for CVs and such. And a research oriented CV shouldn't be more than 2 pages, I think. And if you can list down in bulleted points everything that each experience involved, the kind of softwares that you used, you can include footnotes both in your SOP and your CV. Any sort of code, like use your, I mean, you can link your GitHub profile, um, anything that, any kind of simulations that you want to particularly show them, um, some place where you have all of them together, you can link it there in your CV. Yeah, just make it as thorough as possible. um, yeah, and highlight certain important things in blue. I think probably has Ankita Ghosh. I'll ask her if she's okay with her CV being circulated around. Her CV was probably like the best one that I've seen. Um, with Yeah, it had everything the way, um, it was very clean. It was very well formatted, and all the important things were highlighted. Um, and it also didn't feel excessive at the same time. So yeah, it was succinct and concise. And I'll share my CV as well and my SOP as well after this. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Is the doubt clear? Okay. Any more questions regarding CV and resume?
So one of our attendees has this doubt. So as you know, like when you're applying for placements or some job opportunities, it is said to we should have a CV of page one length. But is that the same when we are applying for research opportunities, or can we extend our CV and as well as describe the whole everything which we have mentioned in a CV in more detail? Would you like to elaborate on that?
I could give it a shot. So, what companies look for is a resume, and what research opportunities ask for is a CV. And I think I'd mentioned the same point once, but a CV is an elaborate resume, and it can go as long as 3 pages. Generally, 2 to 3 is the ideal number of pages. And for the difference being, you should mention some stuff in your research resume, research CV is that one, your publications, which might not be as important when you're applying for companies. You can still mention it if there is place, but companies have this restriction of single page. But yeah, for research resumes, it is important that you mention your publications. And publications, again, I would broadly put it in 3 buckets. One is accepted, one is under review, revision, or rejected. You generally put accepted and under review papers in your CV, and you very clearly mention that it is under review or it has been accepted. And as Shubha mentioned, it would be good if you can give a proof of paper of sorts, like you could link your archive paper, or if it's already accepted, you could directly link the paper itself. Uh, that is one thing extra that you can put in your research CV. And another thing that you could add is awards and recognition. So it is so coming from applying outside India, awards and recognition is given a huge importance. It shows you're something outside of your academic career as well. Not just a student who studies and does research, but also does other stuff. And you can mention stuff, extracurricular stuff in that. Like, for example, you can if you play a certain sport at a certain level, you can put that under your awards and recognition. And one other thing that I mentioned personally was my mentorship experience. So I was a part of a student project as well as a part of RSM, and I did get a chance to mentor some amazing undergraduate students. So I did make sure to put that in my CV. So again, when you're applying for graduate positions, at some point they could expect you to go into the academia, and their mentorship comes it is given a huge importance. So if you can also find a place to include your mentorship experience, it would be a good ideal thing. And other than that, yeah, other than that, leadership, of course, leadership and miscellaneous stuff is two other things that you can mention in your CV that could be missing from your resume, like that you can skip in your resume. Resume, again, as I mentioned, should be generally one page, so you can skip all of that. And what is common is your research experience and your technical experience. These are the two things that's generally common in both of these. And CV generally is a little bit more elaborate version of your resume. So you can go as long as 4 points and per bullet being 7 to 8 words long, and it should very succinctly tell the person who's reading what the project is about. And it's important that you quantify everything. So let's say, and I'm just giving a very vague example. You write down that I worked on so and so project, and it is better than some other project. So that is a very vague statement. But if you instead write down that you worked on so and so project, and it outperforms some other project by X percentage, that is a very quantified and a good way of putting up stuff. So it's important that you do that in your CV as well, and I mean CV and resume. So uh, I hope that clears the question. If anyone else wants to add to it, feel free to.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gokul, for answering our query. So one of our speakers will be leaving. So I would like to thank Rakshit for attending our event and resolving all the doubts of our attendees. So would you like to say something, Rakshit?
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it was great talking out here. Yeah, meeting y'all. Bye bye. Okay,
Bye, Rakshit. Thanks for doing this.
thank you.
सेक्शन इज L1. कितने लोगों को पता है L1 क्या होता है? आपको पता है? तो अभी प्रोफेसर से L1 लेने के लिए तुम लोग को पहले प्रोफेसर बोलेगा कि ये फॉर्मेट में लिख के दो वगैरह, राइट? तो मोस्टली बहुत बार डाउट रहता है कि L1 कैसे लिखते हैं, राइट? तो सबको पता है L1 कैसे लिखते हैं, राइट? कोई एक टेम्पलेट वगैरह किसी ने प्रोफेसर के पास अप्लाई किया होगा तो उन्होंने ऐसा बोला होगा कि ड्राफ्ट करके दो, सबको एक्सपीरियंस है ना इसका? या बट जो सेकंड वे जिसमें हमें लिख के देना एलओआर, ऐसे सिचुएशन में एलओआर कैसे लिखते हैं ये हमें पता होना चाहिए, राइट? तो बेसिकली खुद की तारीफ करनी होगी, तो वो कैसे करते हैं, वो थोड़ा एफिशिएंटली कैसे करेंगे, वो जो आसान एक्सपीरियंस, क्योंकि उन्होंने भी ऐसे एडवांस सीखे होंगे, राइट, उनके वजह से उनको ऐसी यूनिवर्सिटी में सिलेक्शन मिल रहा है, ऐसा नहीं बोल रहा, बट
Yes.
got the point, right?
Yeah. So we'll be moving on to the next section regarding LORs. So, like as you know, like LOR plays like a quite important role in an application. So our first question is like, from whom should we approach to get the LOR, and like could you just elaborate like how should we approach a professor or someone we have worked with in the past to get a LOR, and from whom should we actually get a LOR in case we are applying somewhere?
Okay, I could try to take that up. So, how I went about it is I kind of zoomed in on professors with whom I had had fun working with, from whom I had learned a lot, with whom I had interacted a lot more than other professors, and with whom I've had some sort of personal interaction in the sense that they know about my work ethic, they know about the things that interest me, they remember certain conversations that I had, and I with them regarding our research or related, like my field is like within aerospace, it's advanced space propulsion and like electric propulsion and stuff. And there's very few professors in Manipal who worked on that kind of stuff. So I seeked many professors within India outside of our own college. And even so, the professor that I worked with at IIT Bombay really helped me out. He was one of these professors who really made an impact. And I got lucky in that way because not a lot of people have had that kind of same experience with any professor, at least from MIT. Or um, in general, it's rare that professors will write an LOR for you, but then he did. So, and this is not to like, I don't blame the professors either. I'm sure they're like super busy and stuff. So if you can give them, for the other professors who I approached, I gave them a broad outline of or a draft of exactly what I wanted to be communicated to the graduate admissions committee about me. Um, Certain things that, or I think people do it in two ways. Someone that you've worked on actively in research, and someone who's observed you in classrooms. I don't think that for like PhD or for master's applications, the latter really matters that much as to, other than showing that you have like a general curiosity towards the subject, and you're an avid listener or stuff like that, that can be extrapolated from how you behave in class, unless you are super attentive and yeah, like a class student, it's rare for students to for professors to remember you. So just give them, make their job as easy as possible, send them a draft, talking about things that you haven't mentioned in your CV, or certain experiences in their classes or while working with them on a really exciting research project that stuck out to you, and how you brought more value to that project, and how that experience shaped you, and the kind of just how the professor would have observed you. And um, it's basically a stamp of approval from a professor saying this person can finish their degree, this person can make the sacrifices that are necessary to finish graduate school, and that they're promising and that they will do meaningful research. So anything that about you that communicates that idea, make sure to put that in your um, LOR. And if you have three, if you've been asked for three LORs, make sure each LOR says something different about you. If all professors talk about the same characteristics, um, maybe that would work, maybe that wouldn't work, but it just becomes very repetitive. So make sure every experience that the professor is talking about is personalized, and not everything needs to be in one LOR. You can have just 2-3 instances that you talk about um, that make the professor remember you a certain way. That sort of advances your likelihood of getting accepted to the program. So, yeah.
Can I ask so
Answer.
as
Oh yeah.
like
Survi, you can just, if you want to add, you can add on.
hello, hello.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
you're audible,
audible.
Survi.
Okay, no, I just want to I just that I want to say that it's just keep good rapport with all the professors because we don't know. Ideally, you should know your professors well. The professor should know you well. But in case that doesn't happen, you might have to approach someone who doesn't know you that well. Make sure you have good rapport with all of them and all of them know about you properly. So that's all I want to say.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Survi. Like you guys have covered like most of the points, so I would like to ask the audience whether they have any questions. Yeah.
So does the source from which you got the LOI matter a lot? Like, for example, from a professor, university, does it carry more weightage than a company that you work with?
Yeah. So one of the questions from one of the attendees is like, say, how is the position of the person who is recommending an LOR affect while evaluating the LOR? And the second question is like, say if we are getting a technical LOR from a technical company or a technical startup where we have interned, so how does that compare to an academic LOR, and does it hold the same value compared to that?
So I could answer this. So if you're applying for a very research-based degree, say MS thesis based masters or PhD for that matter, I would strongly suggest getting 3 academic LORs or at least 2 academic and 1 professional LOR. And if it is a more industry based degree, then it could be two industrial LORs and 1 academic LOR or all 3 industrial LORs. Uh, but if your question is, does it matter from whom you're taking it? So people tell it doesn't matter, but what I've realized is the research community is a very small community. Professors know each other. Like there's a very good chance that if you're working with a certain professor, some other professor in the same field will must have met this professor at some point in his career. So if uh, if your question is does the person you're getting a LOR matter, then I would say it matters in terms of relevance. So you're applying for robotics, then if you're taking an LOR from a professor who taught you something not related to robotics, will be a very very bad idea. So say if you're taking a taking a LOR which just focuses on his soft skills, saying this student was a plus student in my class, he did his assignments on time, etc., etc., and it is not very relevant to the field you're applying for, then I would say it's not a great idea. uh, it would rather help if you get a good LOR from a professor who taught a subject or with whom you researched with, uh, who is in the same field that you're applying for. So, if I were to cite an example, so for PhDs, what happens is you're supposed to interview with the professor before you get a position, before you get a acceptance. So one of the professors actually knew one of the professors who wrote my LOR. So they had the same academic advisor when they were doing the PhD. So he did contact the other professor and ask about me in terms of how good a student I am with respect to taking me in. So PhD is a funded commitment. So the professor has to make sure that the student whom is funding is good enough. So they will uh, go to the best extent they can to figure out if he's a good student or not. And I'm sure masters also, the admissions committee has been doing it for a good while. So they will check out to a good extent what kind of a student you are. So I would suggest taking LORs from professors with whom you did relevant research, uh, or with whom you took relevant subjects. Uh, uh, yeah, I hope that clears some of the questions.
Thanks a lot, Gokul. Moving on. Yeah.
Question work, LOS book, and one academic.
Yeah.
So for the academic, like, it's from different departments, right? So does that really create a lot of like how much graduated? I mean, ICT and CS.
Yeah.
So different department, but not the same department. So professor and
Yeah. So we one of our attendees have like a simple question. So let's say the person who is like the professor who is recommending the LOR is from some other discipline or is from some other department. So does that make any difference?
I personally don't think it does. I'm an aeronautical student. I took LORs from one chemical engineering professor, one professor from aerospace engineering from another university. And yeah, just one professor out of the three that recommended me was from my department. So as long as they know you and they've established some sort of rapport with you, I think that is good enough.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Shubha. Um, yeah. Yeah. That's that.
yeah. So my question was like since both are in aerospace. Around 2 months ago, I got rejected in the same thing for logistic reasons because I'm a foreign national. Because aerospace is really like secure thing, right? So will I be facing such problems in the future when I'm applying for like masters or other internship in the same aerospace?
Yeah. So we have like two. Starting on, we have one question that is regarding the length of the LOR. So, like, how long should an LOR generally be? Like, should it be like 1 pages or 2 pages? So start with that. Yeah. So could one of you could answer this?
That's a very good question that none of us covered on, and it is very important that you keep your LOR very short and to the point. I would say 400 words to 500 words at max, because generally the format, how an LOR looks like is you have your university header and the professor's details, and then comes your LOR. So it has to all fit in one page. So it's around, you'll be left with around 400 words. And yeah, 400 to 450 words, I think, would be an ideal way of doing it. It is little less, but yeah, uh, we can't change stuff. So yeah, 400 words would be a good way. One page, everything should fit in a single page. That would be my suggestion.
Thanks a lot, Gokul, for clearing it out. So we have like one more question. So this is a specific question not related to CV. So one of our attendees, he is also interested in aeronautical and aerospace, and he has a question. Would you like to say?
Yeah. Hi guys. So my question is that so around 2 months ago, I was rejected from one of the abroad internships because of logistics reasons. Being that I'm an Indian national, so the thing is that aerospace is that kind of a field. So I want to know from both of you if I'll be facing such problems in the future with internships or with masters or even job opportunities, or maybe I should rethink where I'm applying because of that.
I think Gokul can talk about this in his space robotics niche, and I could maybe talk about it broadly.
Yeah, sure. So very short answer, it does matter because there's this thing called TAL, especially in the US. Europe, I think it's a little bit more lenient, but in the US, in America in general, there's this thing called TAL or Technology Alert List. And aerospace does come under that because you will end up drawing data from the government. So that's the main reason why aerospace comes under that. And will you face big problems? Then the answer is no. there'll be small issues. There might be visa delays. I personally had visa delay. I think even Shubha went through the same. So mine took I think 3 weeks. Hers took 4 weeks. Generally, things are supposed to happen in 3 days. So yeah, there'll be some small issues, but it's not anything to be concerned about. That should not be the criteria because of which you're not applying. So should not think of it that way. That I'm in aerospace and you will be bottlenecked with certain opportunities, but yeah, that should not be the reason why you're not applying because there are plenty of opportunities. And when, for example, the internship fair here started, and you are eligible for 90% of the positions, but for the rest 10% of the position, you have to be a US citizen. So there'll be some small logistical problems, but yeah, it it won't be anything big. It won't affect your career in a very big sense. If you don't get one, you get the other one. That's how it works.
Yeah, so it's not just aerospace. I feel like after my visa interview, I was in a group with a lot of people who had gotten this temporary visa refusal, and we were all asked to provide additional information. And there were background checks done on the research that we'd done in our publications and past travel, all of that, past travel history and such. But it makes sense, right? I mean, if at least like with my field, like there's no way that I can make it sound innocuous or harmless. Like I feel like they're just doing their job in a sense, and you need to have tolerance for that. Um, like I work on like fusion and stuff, like the physics behind that. So there's no way I can disguise that as something that doesn't have dual applications. But there's also a reason why I've dedicated like beginning like from like sophomore or like freshman year, like just doing this and sticking to this field. So I don't think it's anything that should stop you, as Gopal rightfully said. um yeah, I'm sorry about the resurgent noises in the background.
Okay, so I would like to thank our speakers for this insightful session and their guidance. With this, we will be coming to an end of today's session. If you guys have any more questions, you guys can reach us out at our Instagram or any of our seniors or the seniors that were present today.
I think you guys like Sanskriti and Pratinav can make our
I'm really
contact
sorry, we just
details
have one more
available.
question, so we will be taking that up. Just give us 2 minutes.
Since you have like a very good audience and they're quite curious, so we have like a last question for the day. So, like, what's the difference between like a professional MS, which people do like after like say 2 years of job experience after working industry, and say like a research-based MS, which people graduate like naturally go like after their undergrad. So, could you just highlight difference of both of them?
Yeah, sure. So professional MS. So generally, what happens is thesis-based MS students are a little bit more open to doing their PhD. Professional MS students do it if they want to specifically get into the industry. But again, this is not any hard rule that if you do a thesis-based MS, you can only do PhD. That's not the case. Like at least 80% of the people who do thesis-based MS just go to the industry. But and vice versa is also true. So people who do professional MS can do your PhD. But the difference is that when you do a thesis-based MS, you are eligible to do research in the university itself. You can work with professors in terms of independent study. So there's this concept of independent study where you can work with a professor for credits, and you need not take any subjects that for the credits. So, for example, if you have to finish 12 credits, you can do 4 credits of independent study, which is essentially research with professor. And thesis based MS lets you do that. Professional MS, again, they will structure it in a way that you end up in the industry, in a good position in the industry. So that is the only big difference. And as I think I mentioned before, in terms of the coursework and everything, it is the same. Like thesis based MS is more or less like a superset of professional MS. You can take all the professional courses in your thesis based MS, and some research courses cannot be taken in the professional MS. That is the only difference. Like there are so here, specifically here, there are courses where all you do is read research papers. Uh, like you just read research papers and give your insights on it. So those are the kind of courses that are there here. So if you take a professional degree, you will not be eligible for those. For credit, you can anytime take it, audit it, or take it for the sake of understanding. Uh, but yeah, so that is the only huge difference between both of these. And the application process, everything is very similar. And the general consensus is that it is easier to get into a professional MS than a thesis based MS. I don't know I don't know how true it is, but uh, logically speaking, it's easier because thesis based MS, there's a chance of you getting funded. So that is the main reason it is slightly harder. Yeah, so that is, I think, yeah, from my understanding, that's the difference. If Shubha or Surbhi wants to add.
Yeah, that's. I think you covered everything. Nothing from my end.
Yeah, everything was covered by Gokul. I don't think I have anything to add either.
So yeah, so with this, we'll be coming to the end of our seminar. So thanks a lot for all the speakers. We'd like to thank Gokul, Shobha, and Surbi, as well as Akshit. So for giving their insights to the whole application process in general. You guys can connect with them through their social profiles, as well as you can connect with RSM in case you have any other doubts. So with this, I would like to thank you all as well as speakers for giving their insights. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks a lot, everyone, and good luck with your applications and everything else. Do keep in touch.
Yeah, feel free. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. I still have some time. Google's already there, and like I'm sure he is a lot busier than any of us now. So I'm still at home in India, and I have some time to spare. So even if you want to get on a call with me, I'd be happy to sit and look through your drafts and suggest stuff or recommend programs to you. If any of you are also interested in anything within aerospace, I can probably look for people um, who might help you out. So um, if there's anything related to space engineering or like my field, please reach out to me, or even in general, or any of us, Kritika, Ankita, Surabhi, all of the past RSM members, and yeah, thank you for your wonderful questions and good luck. This is a very Yeah, it's going to be. I think it'll end by Jan 15th, was probably like in my last deadline. So make sure you submit your stuff, like all your application materials, way like in advance. Um, yeah, try to be on top of these things. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you so much for
Yeah,
having me. It feels really nice to see a full NLH filled. It feels very nice to see that. Kudos to all you guys for pulling it off really well and for making this happen. It was really nice to be here. And as Shiva mentioned, we are always there. Connect us via Instagram, LinkedIn, or you can connect to the RSM members and they'll connect you to us. Don't hesitate. We'll help you through it. Anything related to chemical engineering, please feel free to contact me. I'll guide you through the process. And I think Shobha and Gokul have mentioned it. I covered everything else. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Don't worry and all the best. I'm sure you all are going to do well.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gokul,